Sometimes when we gather data, we get what we call extreme values, values that are far away from the rest of the data values. And we'll see that sometimes they skew some of the calculations we make. So we want to make sure that we use the correct measure of center depending upon whether or not we have one of these outliers or extreme values within our data. So let's take a look at the following examples. We want to find the mean of this data. And notice this data is fairly close together. So let's go ahead and find that mean. Recall that to find the mean, we're going to add all of these up, and then we're going to divide by the number of data that we have. So this adds up to 65. And then since we have 5 pieces of data, we want to take our 65 and divide it by 5. And that gives us a mean of 13. All right, now let's look at the second data set. Find the mean of the following data. And you notice that it's the same set of data I had up here, except there's one additional number that's been added. It's 200. And 200 is a long way away from the other pieces of data here. So let's notice what happens when we try to take the mean. We're going to do the same thing, add them all up. And we'll add that 200 in there. And that's going to give us 265. And now we want to take our 265, and this time we have 6 pieces of data, and add it, or rather divide it by 6. That gives us a mean of 44.17 if I round off to 2 decimal places. Now notice what that additional value that was so far away from the others did to our mean. We went from a mean of 13 to a mean of 44.17. So an important point. If we have an outlier or an extreme value in our data set, the mean is not a good measure of center because an extreme value moves our mean toward that extreme value. So if we have an extreme value, we're not going to use the mean. Let's notice now what happens with the median. So for our next one, we want to find the median of that original set of data. Let's notice it's already in order, so we don't need to do the first step. If we look at the middle of our data is 13, so our median is 13. Now let's find the median with that additional 200 that's been added to the data. Again, that's an extreme value, so we know that it contains extreme values. It's still in order. We have 6 this time instead of 5. So if we look at the middle, we need to average together the 13 and the 15. So 13 plus 15 is going to give us 28. And if we divide 28 by 2, our median is 14. Notice in this instance, that extreme value did not affect the median very much. It pulled it up slightly, but not a whole lot. We went from 13 to 14 for our measure of center. So in the case of having an extreme value in our data, we want to use the median as the measure of center. If there's no extreme value in the data, we want to use the mean as our measure of center. Now, the mode will often be used for qualitative data. We can use it for quantitative data, but we do have to be careful. For example, if we have a list of scores, and the score that happens the most often is 100%, that's not going to be the center of data. It's going to be too high to be the center of a bunch of test scores. So we want to be careful about using the mode as our measure of center for quantitative data. It can be if we have data that's fairly symmetric, but it's rare that we use the mode for quantitative data.